Ladies and gentlemen, we like to believe that everyone is fundamentally good, that deep down, even the darkest among us are simply wounded souls who need healing. But what if that isn't the truth? What if some people move through this world not as damaged humans, but as predators wrapped in human skin? What if the person you've been loving doesn't possess a soul in the way you do? This isn't exaggeration. It isn't bitterness, it's reality, and once these truths become clear, you'll never look at a narcissist the same way again. They say empathy is the invisible thread that ties humanity together. It's that quiet miracle allowing us to look into someone else's eyes and feel, even faintly, what they're feeling. When someone suffers, something inside us responds. We soften, we listen, we reach out. That's the natural rhythm of human connection, but the narcissist doesn't move to that rhythm. It's not damaged, it's missing. You can cry in front of them, you can break apart, begging them to understand, emotionally bleeding right in front of their eyes, and they won't even flinch. Not because they're strong, but because there is a deadness behind their stare. They watch, and instead of compassion, they calculate. You stop being a human in pain. You become data, a reaction, a point of leverage. In their world, your suffering becomes a usable tool. This isn't emotional immaturity. It isn't someone who just needs therapy or more self-awareness. This is something deeper, something spiritually vacant. As if the part of the soul that lets a person feel another's joy or sorrow is undeveloped, or deliberately shut down. That's the part people don't want to accept. Because if someone looks like us, talks like us, lives among us, then surely they must be like us. Right? But look again. A narcissist doesn't feel your sadness. They measure it. They track the extent of your hurt and estimate how much control it can give them. When you're vulnerable, they don't step closer to comfort you. They move in to take advantage. It's not empathy failing. It's empathy missing completely. It's a vacancy filled with ego, manipulation, and cold, strategic intent. If you've ever tried to explain your emotions to a narcissist, you've probably walked away more broken than before. They turn your honesty into ammunition. Your vulnerability becomes a weakness to exploit, and the more deeply you reveal yourself, the more invisible you become to them. It's like screaming into a void. The silence you hear isn't disinterest. It's dehumanization. They don't see you, the real human you. They see an instrument, a reflection, a means to an end, and that's why they can discard you without hesitation, because you were never real to them in the first place. Just a projection, just a mirror they used to see their own image, and when that mirror stops flattering them, they smash it. That's not how human beings behave. That's how something else behaves, something that walks in human form, but operates from a different moral frequency. And that's when the word evil starts to make sense, because it isn't their anger or arrogance that defines them. It's the absence of humanity itself, that emptiness behind their charm, that void behind their words, that complete lack of emotional connection. Even when you're standing inches away from them, bleeding for them to care, there is a certain cruelty hidden behind their smile, a cruelty that doesn't shout, doesn't rage its studies. It learns your rhythms, your hopes, your needs, and uses them against you. That's how narcissists function. They don't connect, they imitate. They don't feel emotions like you do. They observe, copy, and weaponize them. At first, you don't notice. Their charm seems real. The way they laugh at your jokes, the way they mirror your gestures, the perfectly timed compliments. It all feels too genuine to be fake. But that's the trick. They aren't connecting with you. They're mirroring you. Like a chameleon, like a predator disguised, they study what makes you feel safe and replicate it with eerie precision. When they say, "I love you," it sounds true, but behind the words, there's emptiness. Love to them isn't a feeling, it's a transaction. It's a phrase that unlocks doors, earns trust, gains power. They don't love you. They love what you give them: attention, admiration, compliance. Your love becomes a resource they harvest. Your vulnerability becomes their blueprint. And once they've collected enough, the mask begins to slip. That's when you start seeing it. The emptiness in their eyes when you're hurting. The lack of concern when you reach out. And the cruelest part, the very emotions they pretended to feel are the ones they now use against you. If you cry, they tell you you're too sensitive. If you point out their coldness, they call you crazy. The person who once mirrored your soul becomes the one breaking it. It was never love, it was control. Narcissists are emotional counterfeiters. They know how to look human. They know the right expressions, the right words, the right tone. But look closely. There's a pattern. Their emotions always serve a purpose. They cry to manipulate. They laugh to distract. They rage to intimidate. Every emotion is calculated. And once they no longer need anything from you, the performance stops. The warmth disappears. The kindness fades. The face you trusted becomes cold, even cruel. And you're left stunned, asking questions that make your head spin. Was any of it real? Did they ever mean a single thing? The harsh truth: no, it was all mimicry, a flawless performance. Not because they cared, but because they knew you cared, and that made you useful. It's one thing to be emotionally distant. It's another to imitate emotions to deceive, extract, and destroy. That isn't human mistake. That is method. It's a system. A dark intelligence capable of mimicking love without ever feeling it. And when you finally realize that every moment you trusted was part of a calculated act, you understand this wasn't someone who couldn't love. This was someone who chose not to. Someone who used love as bait. That isn't just toxic. It's predatory. It's evil. Guilt is one of the forces that keeps human beings morally grounded. It's the internal signal telling us when we've crossed a line or hurt someone. For most people, guilt is painful but important. It helps us reflect, apologize, grow. But for a narcissist, guilt doesn't exist in the way you know it. They don't feel it. What they feel is exposure. When a narcissist is caught harming, lying, cheating, manipulating, they don't think, "What have I done?" Their mind instantly jumps to, "How do I protect myself?" There is no inner conflict about the damage they caused, no remorse rising in their chest, only the sharp fear of losing control, of being seen for what they really are. The fear isn't about hurting you. It's about losing power. That's why real apologies don't come from them. And when they do, say sorry. It's engineered, strategic, hollow. "I'm sorry you feel that way. You misunderstood me. I didn't mean it like that." Their apologies aren't apologies. They're shut-down mechanisms. They're resets. They're ways to keep themselves untouchable. They don't feel guilt. They feel inconvenience. And when you try to hold them accountable, something darker appears. Instead of taking responsibility, they flip the script. They turn themselves into the victim. Suddenly, your pain is an attack. Your truth is cruelty. Your boundaries are betrayal. They look at you with cold confusion, as if saying, "How dare you make me face myself?" That's when you realize they are not emotionally invested in the harm they cause, not at all. They walk through the wreckage of your heart like someone stepping over spilled water, mildly annoyed, completely unaffected. And if you push harder, if you demand accountability, they escalate. They don't apologize. They retaliate. They rewrite the story. They smear your name. They become the martyr, anything to avoid being wrong. Because to them, being wrong isn't a chance to grow. It's a threat to their identity. Their entire sense of self is built on the illusion of superiority. To admit guilt would shatter that illusion. So they deny, deflect, and distort until the truth becomes unrecognizable. You can beg them to understand your pain. You can pour out your heart, hoping they'll finally see what they've done. They won't, not because they don't hear you, but because they don't care. What matters is image, control, dominance, not truth, not repair, not love. This absence of guilt, it's not a flaw, it's a warning. It reveals who they are behind the charm and excuses. It shows you aren't dealing with someone who made a mistake. You're dealing with someone who doesn't believe they made one. And that absence of remorse, that's where the evil lives. There's something disturbing about someone who enjoys your pain, not someone who ignores it, but someone who feeds on it, who provokes it, watches it unfold, and draws energy from the suffering they cause. That's what makes narcissists terrifying. It's not just that they hurt people, it's that they seem to awaken when they do. It excites them, it empowers them, and if you've been close to one, you know this truth. They don't just tolerate conflict, they manufacture it. You'll see the pattern. Everything can be calm, peaceful, even joyful. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, they inject tension, a cruel remark, a subtle insult, a shift in tone, and you're left confused, wondering, where did that come from? But that confusion is the point. Confusion weakens you. It bends your reality, and in your destabilized state, they gain control. A narcissist studies your vulnerabilities like a scientist. They remember what makes you insecure. They recall the moments that shattered you. They store the wounds you trusted them with, not to protect you, but to weaponize them. Not in a moment of accidental anger, but with chilling intention. They push the specific buttons that make you unravel. When you cry, they smirk. When you beg for understanding, they roll their eyes. When you finally break and explode, they act calm, detached, even bored. Your pain feeds their sense of superiority. Watching you fall apart over them proves, at least in their mind, that they matter, that they control your emotional world. And when you start feeling ashamed for reacting, they've already won, because now you're hurting and blaming yourself for it. That's the most twisted part. They don't just cause the pain, they make you believe you are the problem. And when you finally speak up and say, "You're hurting me," they tell you you're too sensitive, they say you're overreacting. These words aren't confusion, they're weapons. The narcissist isn't bewildered by your emotions, they're energized by them. You might ask yourself, who could possibly enjoy someone else's suffering? But that's exactly what separates them from everyone else. Most people recoil when they see someone they care about in pain. A narcissist leans closer. They provoke emotional chaos not because they're careless, but because they crave it. It gives them life. It affirms their dominance. It makes them feel powerful. And in those moments when they watch you break, when your voice cracks, when your eyes fill with tears, they feel something, but it's not empathy, it's satisfaction, it's victory. That isn't miscommunication. It's malice, the quiet pleasure of watching someone hurt, knowing they caused it. That isn't human love. It's something darker, colder, calculated. When someone uses your deepest emotions for entertainment, you're not dealing with someone who lost their way. You're dealing with someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Truth is the foundation of your reality. It anchors your sense of self, your understanding of the world, and your ability to trust. But in the hands of a narcissist, truth isn't just bent, it's dismantled. What once felt solid becomes shaky. What once felt certain becomes blurred, and slowly your mind becomes a battlefield where your memories, instincts, and identity are all under siege. A narcissist doesn't lie like most people lie. It's not to avoid shame or escape trouble. They lie to dominate, to twist reality so deeply that you begin to doubt your own. They don't just want to win arguments, they want to rewrite the entire narrative. They want to become the single source of truth in your world. And once they achieve that, they own you. Gaslighting isn't just manipulation, it's psychological erosion. They deny what you saw with your own eyes. They challenge what you heard with your own ears. You say, "You yelled at me last night." And they say, "You imagined that." You say, "You told me you loved me." And they reply, "You always twist things. It seems small at first. Maybe they just remembered differently." But over time, the lies become consistent, constant, and when you resist, they don't just deny. They belittle, mock, accuse. You begin questioning everything. You look at yourself and wonder, "Am I losing my mind?" You replay moments again and again. You write things down just to feel anchored. That's exactly what they want. They need you disoriented, unsure, dependent. Because if you can't trust your own mind, you'll start relying on theirs. And that's when they win completely. They become the author of your reality. They decide what happened and what didn't. They shape what you remember, how you feel, how you react, and worst of all, they make you feel guilty for your own confusion. Why are you overreacting? Why do you always accuse me? Why can't you ever let things go? These aren't questions. They're psychological weapons. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a method. Gaslighting is their way of dismantling your identity so they can rebuild you into someone easier to control. Someone who doubts themselves, someone who bends to their version of truth, someone who stops asking questions, and when you finally wake up to the manipulation, you don't just feel betrayed, you feel insane. Because they didn't just hurt you, they made you question whether it ever happened at all. That's not just emotional abuse, that's the intentional destruction of your inner world, and the person doing it isn't confused, they're in full control. Every denial, every twisted fact, every inverted story is a calculated move. A move in a game where your sanity is the prize, and when someone plays with your mind for power, that's not just toxic, that's evil. Change is one of the most beautiful human abilities. We fall, we learn, we evolve. We hurt others, and if we have a conscience, we feel the weight of it. We grow because of that discomfort. But narcissists don't grow. They adapt, and that difference means everything. They don't transform into better people. They simply refine their disguise. They become more persuasive, more polished, more efficient at deception. That's not healing. That's evolution for survival, not morality. If you've ever been trapped in a narcissistic cycle, you've witnessed this. The apology always arrives when you're ready to walk away. The tears surface just when your boundaries strengthen. The sudden vulnerability, the childhood trauma stories, the promises of therapy. It all feels genuine, but it isn't rooted in the desire to change. It's a tactic, a performance, a reset button designed to pull you back in. And when you believe them, when you give them another chance, the cycle begins again. Only now they're smarter. They know what words soften you. They know what parts of themselves need better hiding. They know how to make the abuse more subtle. So subtle it becomes harder to explain, harder to identify. That's not growth, that's refinement. That's a perfected mask. That's someone becoming more dangerous by becoming more convincing.